You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And as always, we are your hosts for this show. So, yeah, man, it's been pretty crazy in the Star Wars world lately. You know, it's
Yeah, man. People been talking smack and everything.
Well, I mean, it's not just that, but I mean, it's just been, it's one of those things where literally every time we're making these shows, I have no idea, which topic we should actually choose or anything like that. But this one was another one of yours, and actually we're fitting it together with something that I found earlier today that I thought was kind of meaty. Yours dealt with just basically a lot of the things that we can expect from the Andor series and what it's going to be about and, how all that's going to shake down. And then, of course, for the thing I saw earlier that was interesting is it's talking about that it might be breaking canon. And then I saw some other article where it might nullify a lot of Rebels. And, it's just... I was like, I didn't even really get a chance to even fully read it yet. I figured I would kind of do that while we're doing this, but yeah, it's just a really weird, thing. I mean, it's just, I don't understand why Disney seems to somewhat lose control of pretty much all their properties by way of marketing. I mean, if any of these rumors or reports or whatever are true, it's kind of a disturbing thing.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the part that you were referring to, so I would love to hear more about that. As far as the breaking of the canon thing, I've heard some things dealing with canon as it relates to Andor. I don't know if it's the same thing, so that's why I'm really curious to hear your take.
Well, I don't know. I got the article up, so I'll have to. I'm basically, it's going to be one of those things that, I was scrambling and everything. And I mean, one of the things that I find really fascinating about this whole thing, because again, it's funny that it used to be this whole show was pretty much based on you and I at work talking about Star Wars. And, people kept saying, oh, well, you guys might actually want to make a show out of this thing, and and then, of course, as time went on, we both left that district or whatever, and it got to the point where, I mean, even though it's ironic, as of this week, we're actually working together again, officially, which is kind of cool. So I mean, but still, it's kind of the effect is the same. Really, the only time now where we have time besides sending articles back and forth or maybe just making really quick comments is this show. This show is now. It used to be that, we would talk about stuff and then we would do a version of that for the show. But now, literally, if something's coming out or maybe when we do the reviews of some of these series and stuff, it's like literally the first time that I have to where I can talk to you about it is this show, which, of course, is great because it then makes it more authentic. But where it gets difficult, though, is in a case like this where you just... I mean, it's just constant new developments with this stuff, and not all of them healthy, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I just saw something before I don't even know if you had a chance to see it yet.
Probably
but Mark
not.
Ruffalo. All right, so Mark Ruffalo, Mr. Incredible Hulk himself, kind of threw some shots at Star Wars. In regards, because I guess people are trying to compare Star Wars.
Oh,
to the
was it the
MCU.
She-Hulk thing? And he was kind of like when they were talking about where there was all these, like, Marvel's doing too many TV shows and too many of this, and I think he called out Star Wars for doing it too. I saw that he had made comments. I didn't know what they were, so by all means, enlighten us.
Yeah. Yeah, he basically said that, somebody asked him about the MCU. And, he's like, well, the MCU is ever, expanding and doing stuff like that. And he said, Star Wars is just repetitive. And I was like, ooh, all right. But, I mean, it's kind of like, that's a conversation in and of itself, really.
Which we can definitely have. I mean, look, this is a Star Wars discussion show. Voyager's here. He's wow, he's even he's even kind of upset about something that we said last week, actually. Let me get into some of these. Yeah, let me get into a couple of these chats that he sent in because they're kind of funny, but also kind of. And again, this is what we love because when you guys chat in immediately, it doesn't matter. Like I said, it's not like we actually pre-plan these conversations. There's no script. There's none of that stuff. And we've even said, look, just because we have this one topic doesn't mean that we're married to it. I mean, ultimately, this is like a bunch of people getting together every Friday, every Monday, talking Star Wars. So, we're more than happy to digress from what we would consider the main topic. Although we do try to, talk about that too, since that's why you clicked. And hey, if you guys enjoy that format or whatever, be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, because again, it helps the algorithm and helps us bring the show to you, and hopefully we can grow it and actually have larger discussions. But to that end, Voyager wants to kick things off. He says, look, Taika acting like he forgot about the prequels, and now Tony Gilroy saying he's not a big fan of Star Wars. WTF is up with these Star Wars directors? They're acting too cool for school. And he's not entirely wrong about that, where it's a mixed bag, though, because on one hand, if you have people who are too much of a fan of the franchise, that could hurt it too. You're because I mean, imagine this: you're like the ultimate Star Wars fan, and now you get to control the direction of it. And look at a lot of the fan fiction and stuff that's out there, or just imagine when you're playing with your figures as a kid or something. You wouldn't want to. Now, granted, I will say I brought this up on the show before. When I would play with the action figures when I was a kid, this is why I didn't usually like to play with my friends. I would, obviously play sports, play other stuff. But when it came to like the whole action figure thing, that was usually a solo venture for me, because they either wanted to act out movie scenes, or they just weren't really serious enough, or the stories they wanted to do, or I would come up with some really cool story and then they would, it would just be some stupid thing or whatever. But that said, not every Star Wars story that you come up with is going to be some gem. Now, you have brought up on several occasions and about the books. And I mean, I've read a ton of them, so I wholeheartedly agree that they could mine the expanded universe for really good stories, and you could even bring that into the new canon if you want. Thing is, though, I know what he means, I mean, it's kind of like you got these guys that are in charge of the franchise now, and, you got Taika asking an actress who played a prominent role in the franchise, hey, have you ever wanted to be in this thing? I mean,
like,
that's kind of inexcusable. It's funny because the more I thought about it, the more I started thinking to myself, like, that's really inexcusable. And then with Tony Gilroy saying that he's not a fan, again, with him, I almost give a free pass simply because him not being a fan, I think, is what actually made Star Wars even better. I mean, Gareth Edwards is credited as directing Rogue One, but it was really Tony Gilroy that came in and did a lot of the reshoots, and he was responsible for a lot of what that became. And sometimes I think it takes a non-fan to step back and look objectively at the story, because if you think about it, Lucas wasn't a fan of it. In a lot of ways, he didn't understand why everybody was getting all knotted up about it. It was a creation from his head, and it was a passion, and he loved it, but he wasn't a fan of it.
It's one of those things, and you hit on a couple good points, and this is a good place to start. You always have to think about, it's almost like a parent, right? You got some parents who hold on to their kids too tightly, much like Princess Leia, the more you hold tight, the more they slip through your fingers,
Yes, with her
and
fake
that's
little
true.
British accent that she had,
Mm, yeah.
that she then
And then
lost
on
by the end of the film. But go on. I'm listening.
nice. So, but the other thing is that if you have someone who's not necessarily quote a super fan, or they're a casual, you know, fan of the franchise or whatever, they can look at it more objectively, like you said. And so there has to be and that's what makes Star Wars so unique, because as I'm always saying, it came out of the mind of one man. It's not
Mhm.
like you had all this extra source material like Marvel, where you have all these comic books and different iterations of these characters where you can kind of, pick from, and just kind of, all right, we're going to do the Amazing Spider-Man this time. And this time we're going to do the Spectacular Spider-Man. And, it's, you have all these different versions of the same character, but with Star Wars coming from the mind of one person, is almost kind of like you have to know what that person would do next.
Mhm.
And that's what's really hard about Star Wars, is that you almost have to get into the mind of George Lucas and figure out, like, all right, where will he go next with this?
Well,
And with
that's a
him
good
not
point.
writing the stories anymore, it's kind of like, all right, well, now everybody's kind of having their own uh version of it, of George Lucas's mind.
Okay, but let me ask you this, because this
Hmm.
is something that I think I've always thought this, in my head off and on through the years, but it's really ringing out when you're actually saying all this stuff, is that we keep talking about how it's from the mind of one man. It's from the mind of one man. And, all these
Hmm.
guys are having problems with that. And maybe it's because it's a film medium, but I point to the fact that you get Timothy Zahn, and then you get all these brilliant writers, both of the
Hmm.
expanded universe and even the new canon, like Claudia Gray knocks it out of the park every time.
Hmm.
And you have a number of other
Sure.
authors, some of whom used to write for the expanded universe and sort of ported over to the new canon, but a lot of them,
Hmm.
some of them are brand new,
Hmm.
and it's like, why is it that these guys can come up with stuff that's compelling, complex, still maintains the themes and all that? Like they get it. They knock it out of the park. It feels like George Lucas Star Wars. And yet these people at Lucasfilm who are trying to make these new, movies or whatever, just seem to miss the mark completely. And it's almost kind of like what it goes back to something you had said years ago, where it was like what they should probably do. I think you might have said this after The Last Jedi. It's like, look, why don't you just let the authors write the stories? You
Hmm.
could even have somebody adapt them into screenplays, because not every author could adapt stuff into screenplays, right? So
True.
you have somebody write the stories, and then you get somebody maybe on the level of a Lawrence Kasdan or something like that that can write a script and maybe punch it up a little, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's honestly how I feel, because those people are successful. The reason why is because authors study storytelling. That's all they do.
Well, that's all they
That's it.
can do, right? Because I mean,
That's what
that's
I'm
all you
saying. Like
got.
that's it. Like, they're
No
storytellers.
visuals, no, you know.
Exactly. And so your imagination has to be at a certain level to be an author. You have to be able to convey that without visuals to a wide public. And so you have to really, really understand, like, the inner workings and the minutia of a story. Whereas you have some directors who are like, okay, yeah, I'm a director and screenwriter. And it's like, okay, you can't serve two masters sometimes. Some people are really talented at it and they can do both, like a Spielberg, or even George Lucas at times, because he did great with Red Tails. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And but at the same time, everybody's not that. It's like everybody can't be a Michael Jordan, a LeBron James. Everybody doesn't have those skill sets where they can do those multiple things, or Prince. Where you can really do this stuff at a high level consistently, you know, everybody just doesn't have that. So I think that that's where Star Wars needs to go when it comes to things like that. And even with this Andor series, because that's what we're kind of talking about, and that's what a lot of this derived from, right? Tony Gilroy did the Bourne. He did a lot of the Bourne movies, right? And that's kind of what Andor is gonna kind of turn into, is more like of a Bourne identity, less James Bondish, but more Bourne, where it's like it's for focusing more on characters. And that's one of the things that even Oscar Isaac, he just recently said that, he's open to doing more Star Wars movies now. Well, before he was kind of like, unless I get a
Yeah,
new
if I
house,
needed
I'll
a
do
house
one.
or something, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was joked about that, but now he's kind of like, no, I'm really open to it. But the thing is, he's like, the story has to be really good, and I have to have a good director, and that's the reason why he did the TV show Moon Knight, because it wasn't so much about the character or the action of it. It was more so the character. That's what he really wanted to do. He's like, I got into acting because I really wanted to get into the homemade, the characters, something original where I can kind of bring that to life. And, I wasn't getting that with Star Wars, and I can understand why. But now in this situation like Andor, I think Andor is a great format, because and what they're trying to do with this, and this kind of, goes into the thing that I sent you, was that, it's really going to get into the characters. It's not so much about, you know, lightsabers and all that stuff. That stuff is not even, really in there. It's really so much about like, okay, how did the people who started the rebellion, like, how did they get to this point?
Well,
And
and yeah,
what
it's like,
motivates them and
right.
what pushes them forward.
And it's ordinary people.
Yeah.
Voyager has a couple of points here. One, of course, he says, I'm still mad at you both for calling the prequels like Teletubbies, but I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. Again, for clarification, it's like, listen, okay, first of all, we didn't call, Ronaldo's with us. Hey, Ronaldo. First of all, we didn't call the prequels like the Teletubbies. What we actually said was that
Right.
Naboo, the planet, if you look, like whenever they show like the fields like before the droid army and all that stuff comes, it looks exactly like Teletubby Land. And I defy you to put up a still of like the Teletubby Land with the rolling hills and stuff, and then put up Naboo and not be like, really? What was Lucas thinking? But again,
Right.
I digress. Okay, so now Voyager, to our point, says, Bix and Cassian are on-again, off-again couple. I hope we get a good romance. We've had a drought of good romance in Star Wars for so long. And before we get into that, Ronaldo says, so Teletubbies are canon?
Yeah, I mean,
Why not?
And that's,
I mean, the ETs
yeah.
were in the Senate scene,
Yep.
So why can't the Teletubby little dudes be there too?
Yeah, they're there for the younglings.
There you go.
But yeah, and that's what I'm really curious, and I'm really anxious to see Andor now, because now I really want to see, like, because this is really turning into that whole political thriller that we were kind of talking about, and because you have, you can even tell in the trailer when they were just like, oh, well, I don't want them to know what I'm doing. And it's like, well, what are you doing? And it's like this whole covert secret meetings. It's kind of people playing that chess game of like, all right, I have to stay a step ahead of this person. This person's getting too close to what I'm really trying to do. How do I throw them off the trail? It's that type of series already. And so even the first 3 episodes, because I was wondering, like, oh wow, we getting 3 like on the opening, but as they had in the interview, the first 3 episodes are like a contained story. It's like one contained story, and then they're going to branch out from off of that. So that's cool.
Well, and that makes sense because, again, like I said, I mean, if you look at it, usually with the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, we usually got 1 or 2 episodes. I mean, with the Mandalorian, I think we only got the 1 at a time, but I think with season 2, no, we only got 1 on that one too. But with Book of Boba Fett, I think that's when it started, where they started releasing a couple episodes. Yeah, and then of course Obi-Wan. And again, with Obi-Wan, And it's the same thing as this. Everybody's like, oh, wow, 3 episodes at once. But need I remind you that when Obi-Wan actually released their 2 episodes, it's like 1/3 the season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much, and this is only 1/4 of the season because it's a 12-episode thing and we're only getting 3 right off the bat. And we had speculated after we saw the trailer last Friday, because that was pretty much what we did, which is another reason why I thought that this would probably be, we were batting around different ideas of what to talk about tonight. It's like, well, yeah, talking about this Andor thing is cool. Number one, it's coming up in like, I don't know, 3 weeks or something.
September 21st.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it's a little bit more than that. It's a little over a month then. But still, I mean, it's premiering within the month, basically. We're in August. It's coming in September. And so you have a situation where, look, we're only weeks away from this thing, essentially. And so we basically talked about the trailer last week and reacted to it. If you guys didn't get a chance to check that out, I mean, not now, finish this, but then go back and check out our reaction to the trailer, because we really did give a lot of insight into what we were thinking about this. But at the same time, you also have to look at it like this. The whole Andor thing is meant to be completely different from any of the other shows. That's the reason why they chose Andor as another character on which to put their focus. And it's compelling because he's a different kind of character. It's like you said, it's going to be more like a Jason Bourne thing, or maybe like a Jack Bauer thing from 24, or, something along those lines. And it's going to be talking about, I remember the article that you had sent or something was talking about, it's going to deal with ordinary people and, just kind of, I guess how people are just dealing with the circumstances in this universe, because all of the series, to varying degrees, have been dealing with the macro, the big Empire versus Rebellion, like kind of what was going on, overall. Where now we're getting more into the micro. We're getting into the, hey, this is how all this stuff that's going on between the Empire and the Rebellion, or between, the aftermath of the Separatists versus the Republic, like all this war that they've been experiencing. Well, now this is how regular people are being affected by this.
Yeah.
And so
we're bringing it closer to home.
Yes. And so getting to Voyager's point, I would imagine, because I know this thing is supposed to go for multiple seasons, and each season actually covers like some significant chunk of time. It's like different periods in Andor's life. And so I have no doubt that we'll probably get some sort of a romance thing going. But I don't know. I mean, to me, it's not 1,000% necessary to do it. I mean, I guess it would make some sense. But even if they put a little sexual tension in there, kind of like how Andor and Jin were, they weren't a couple, but you can tell there's a little bit of
attraction, man.
Yeah, somewhat, And so, I mean, that would be cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, but I agree with actual Voyager on this one. Like, I agree that, yeah, we haven't had a good, kind of that a strained romance type thing. I mean, that was the cool thing about Han and Leia, because it's like, you could tell there was some tension there, but it's like, okay, at first you really couldn't, like, you really thought they didn't like each other.
Yep.
But it was kind of like that whole, elementary school thing where, the little boy doesn't like the girl. And I mean, he's
throwing like rocks at her and pulling her hair because he loves her.
Yeah, because he really wants her to be, his girlfriend or whatever.
Sure.
And so that's kind of how their relationship was. And then it kind of came to a head in Empire, just like, whoa, okay. And then now they're trying to they didn't, you knew it was there, but they didn't focus so heavily on it.
And that's a good point. That's kind of what I would like to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was like for example, Empire, okay, that's when the big kiss and the love theme came. The whole touching moment, and that's why I love the whole line where, she's like, I love you. Now, my thing is funny is that, like, she really just now expressed, because at the beginning of the movie, they're still bickering in that little hallway.
Yep.
then all of a sudden she's like, okay, having this whole big romantic kiss with him. And then, now he's about to, get frozen in carbonite. Oh, I love you. Like, how? Like, there was no date and nothing, what I mean?
Hey, there was
But
the whole, he took her out and that little creature, walking around. This ground sure
I
feels
guess.
strange, It's
So then,
exotic
but his
date.
line, yeah, but his line back to her was like priceless because he was just like, I know, and then, it was such a
Which, of
cool
course,
Han
was
Solo
Harrison
line.
Ford. And that's the thing. And that's why it was good that they actually let the actors who understand and who are
Hmm.
getting inside these characters actually, deal with that. And see, that's the thing that I liked about it was that the romance part of it was sort of understated. It was there. It was
Hmm.
informing many of the scenes, like when he got tortured and she was sort of, gently like toweling him off or
Rubbing his
whatever.
head.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, it was real, it was more, it was less, because that was kind of the problem that I had with the Anakin Padme thing. I mean, even though for the Padme point of view, it wasn't so bad, but Anakin was just so over the top with it. Of course, that matched his character too, but
Yeah, it fit him, and that was so cool about even in Empire, when she's like rubbing his head and it's like she's being gentle and soft with him,
mm-hmm.
but she still remains that Leia because she's still being sarcastic. Like, you certainly have a way with people.
Yeah,
It's just like
exactly.
it's kind of like, well, you're being almost like rude and polite at the same time.
Yeah,
It's so that was cool. So
and
yeah, I
that's
hope we do get something like that in Andor, honestly.
it would be cool. It would be cool and it would be different because it has been missing. And I mean, Ronaldo says, well, we had romance, but no Han and Leia level romance. And that's, I mean, here and there you do. In the expanded universe or even in the new canon books and stuff like that, you get a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it's been significantly lacking because I thought it was sort of wise that they stayed away from it in the sequel trilogy, just because I think that a romance there would have been somewhat shoehorned in.
Well, not so much shoehorn, but I feel like with all the other disasters that they had going on with that, you
That's what I
know,
mean.
oh yeah,
It's kind
yeah,
of like
because
you'd be shoehorning a romance in because it really wouldn't make sense against the backdrop of everything that was going on.
well, yeah, I mean, they tried. I think they were trying to do it with Ray and Finn,
Yeah, a little bit.
at first. He's like, "Well, you got a boyfriend, that whole
Yeah,
thing,
she
and I'm
friend
like, oh,
zoned
here
him
we,
too fast though. I mean, that was,
yeah,
and then, if you think about it, because she friend zoned him like instantly. And then
mm-hmm,
when Rose was all trying to get at Finn, then Finn friend zoned her instantly
mm-hmm,
to the point where they barely had any interaction in The Rise of Skywalker. It was kind of, I mean, from that standpoint, it was probably cool because it was somewhat realistic. It's like you get all these people that are kind of hot and bothered for all these other characters, but they're like, nope. And then, of course,
yeah,
you get that almost weird Stockholm syndrome thing where Rey is kind of like all feeling tender towards Kylo. you
yep,
know and again, when people criticize that, I remind them, like, look, what Rey was really falling for in that was what she saw. She could kind of see, because remember, she had sort of, I mean, I guess I could do the obligatory Star Trek reference and say mind melded with him, but whatever that little force mind connection thing is, she saw deep into him, so she undoubtedly saw the Ben Solo in him.
mm-hmm,
And I think that what that did was she was kind of, in a sense, not even necessarily falling for him in that sense, but really trying to bring that out. And when she finally saw that it was out, I think that's what drove that kiss more than, hey, okay, I've seen you shirtless a few times now, and you're kind of, I'm kind of
I don't
into
know,
this.
because she kind of was, because when he did, she's like, kind of, can you like put a shirt on or something? Like,
Well, yeah, but I mean,
it
there
seemed
was
like,
a,
she was like,
yeah,
I like this, but I shouldn't because
right.
of who you are. You know what I mean?
And you gotta
But
wonder if Kylo's sitting there going like, what? I got the shirt off. I'm gonna call Ray.
yeah, I'm gonna hit her up.
Yeah, I'm
Hit her from the
gonna,
mind real quick.
give her a little Sith-like beefcake thing going or something, because that was a really weird, that was a weird thing.
Yeah, it's like he called her out of the shower or something like that. Cause he's
Right.
all like, I'm like, dude, like,
I'm like, dude, are you? I mean, what's your deal, man? I mean, are you, are you just kind of like,
he
all right, man,
he
I
was trying
like
to tempt her
her,
more into the dark side.
I
I can see.
guess. I mean, it's just so funny though because Adam Driver did such a great job with that character. It just,
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking like some of the stuff, and it wasn't even so much it was unintentionally funny. I think it was intentionally funny, but it was unintentional for the character though, because
Mm-hmm.
Kylo is just so completely unhinged. I'll never forget that lightsaber duel that they had in The Force Awakens. He's just all like, "I want to be your teacher." Like he's just so intense, and he doesn't have any social skills or anything. He's just, you need a teacher. I want to be.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, the stuff that Kylo did as far as of course after he got hit with that plasma bolt and he's all like hitting himself and almost trying to like psych himself up to do I mean, it was just, yeah, he was so erratic and just, or like, what girl? Or when he went ballistic on all those machines with his lightsaber, and everybody else kind of just turned around like, nope, I'm not dealing with him. Like,
Well,
it was just
even in Rise of Skywalker, when Hux said that thing, and he just kind of like chokes him and throws him up against the ceiling, basically, and holds him there. I mean, it was, and that was the thing. I really thought that was cool to show a dark side character, because there were two compelling things about Kylo's character, and then we'll kind of rein it back into the Andor series. But the two compelling things are, one, you never saw a dark side guy tempted by the light side. I thought that was such a brilliant, turn everything on its head kind of move. Because usually it's the other way around, right? It's the light side, you're tempted by the dark. So you never really saw that before. And then the second thing you never saw was a dark side user who is just so completely unhinged and lacks any kind of control over his emotions. You're used to seeing a lot of these Sith Lord guys who
composed Dooku,
yeah,
Vader,
absolutely.
Palpatine.
And that's because they channel and they use the dark side. They use emotion, they use hate, they use anger, but it's in a very controlled way, and it's like they're in control. They're just using these as tools, where Kylo's just like this unpredictable loose cannon, Yeah, like he's just, and I love the fact that his lightsaber reflects that. That the lightsaber that he put together kind of reflected that. So I think that there are cool things that, and here's the other thing too, even though it was rushed, like everything in The Rise of Skywalker, he essentially, when he turned back into Ben Solo, it was totally believable. Again, I will never, ever, deny that it wasn't super rushed. But even, that was one of the things that, even though it was super rushed, I was really surprised that I was kind of okay with it. And in fact, I actually really liked it. And if you remember, I was adamantly dead set against, it's like, no, we can't do this redemption thing again. But it was great. And then I ended up loving the Ben Solo character so much. I'm kind of like, man, now I kind of want an episode 10 with him. With now, let's have Adam Driver playing Ben Solo. Because, I mean, it was cool. He was funny. It was, I mean, it was just,
yeah.
And plus, as I have said numerous times on our show here, it would have been nice to have seen some guy that had committed all these horrible atrocities and was known as this ultimate villain across the galaxy, and now he's got to deal with the fallout of, like, oh, so you think you're a good guy now? Like, we're just going to forget all the stuff that you did kind of thing, and how he has to endure a lot, and the strength that it would take to endure when you could just go back to being bad again and just choke these people out. But if you really do have a change of heart, it's like, all right, you know, I was kind of a jerk to these people, so I guess I got to take this. You know, that would have been compelling to me. All right, we got some chats here. Let's see what we got. Ronaldo's got a bunch. He says, as long as they don't do the 9-year-old Anakin and 14-year-old Padme again, I'm happy. Yeah, I mean, it was necessary. And again, that won't
happen in this one.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, it was just because of when the thing took place. I still say that really they could have started the prequels with episode 2 and then made episode 3 episode 2 and then come up with an episode 3 that would have been a little bit more of some of the things that we read, the whole Order 66 and, you know, Vader kind of being Vader and in the suit. And I mean, the Obi-Wan series could almost have been episode 3 at that point. So I think that, you know, we're probably safe from, I was going to say, it's not May, December. If you're only 9 and 14, it'd be more like a February, like June. He goes on to say, the kiss never felt like a romance kiss to me. It was more like a grateful gesture. Yeah, he's talking about the Kylo Rey one. And that's what I mean. It was really more, I think, of an expression of, oh, wow, you're actually, like, everything that I hoped actually came true. Like, hey, welcome back, you know? Yeah, that was my thing, too, is the fact that none of that really felt like a romance, although it could have been cool. Again, see, that would have even been compelling to me. If Ben Solo had lived and then Rey and Ben had started in a relationship, that would be kind of odd because they, you know, they're a little bit at odds. So, let's see what else we got here. Ronaldo says, remember Jar Jar's girlfriend? I don't, actually. That's the romance we need but don't deserve. You know...
yeah, lost me with that one.
Well, I mean... It's kind of like one of those things that I think that the less
Jar Jar we have.
Well, I will say this, though. Jar Jar, when he's appeared in some of the later stuff, like, wasn't he in a Rebels episode? I know he was in Clone Wars episodes. I could have sworn he popped up. But I know he popped up in, of course, the Aftermath trilogy when he was, like, kind of a court jester type of thing. And I think he was killed off. But, yeah, the less Jar Jar, the better. We don't need to worry about him. He says, tears come out when Kylo reunites with Han in Episode 9. Yeah, where I kind of stand on that was, I thought it probably would have made a little bit more story sense if that had been Luke as a Force ghost visiting him and turning him. But at the same time, I get the poetry where, you know, he's confronting his dad, and this time he's saying those same lines, but they mean something different.
And people, apparently, you know, it was Leia. This is what's been said, that it was Leia who kind of created that image, and that's what caused Leia to pass, because it took a lot out of her to kind of create that whole situation.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, it's certainly plausible. I guess that's probably the best way that you can explain it. But I mean, I just mean from a writing standpoint. Even though I understand it, and the scene totally works, don't get me wrong. It completely works. And I also thought it was brilliant that they, you know, we didn't know. We did not know that Harrison Ford was going to be appearing in this.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
I mean, that just kind of blew our minds. In fact, I remember there was talk while Episode 8 was even being made. It's like, well, will Harrison Ford, either in 8 or 9, come back for like a funeral scene? So there's like this Han Solo funeral thing, which was a big rumor back in the day for episode 8, that it would open with Han Solo's funeral. Would Harrison Ford actually make an appearance for that? And, people just going, no, man, I mean, we were probably lucky to even get him in 7. And, of course, everybody couldn't even believe. I mean, I'll never forget when he even agreed to sign on. I was blown away. But that second trailer where, it's like, Chewie, we're home. And seeing Harrison Ford in the Han Solo outfit and with his hairstyle again. And it's just, I mean, it practically brought tears to my eyes at that point. And it's so for him to even show up in episode 9, it's like, what do they have on him? It's like
they had the death scene that he wanted. That's what they had on him.
Well,
like, all right. But
I mean, he didn't have to do it in 9, and I remember the interviews about that too. They were kind of like, well, it was interesting because of the fact that JJ convinced him, and Harrison was like, look, if that's what you want, I mean, I'll do it, of course, for a ridiculous amount of money, but basically did it here. And then, of course, Ronaldo's like, are we still talking about Andor? Yes, actually, we are. First of all, I should point out that, come on, dude, you know how this works. Goodness, half the time you're responsible for our digressions. But that notwithstanding, this actually does, because the thing about that you have to explore, and we're going to get into the canon part, because like I said, Ronaldo, you may have missed this in the beginning, but there's actually 2 parts to this discussion tonight. The first part, of course, was the article that Daryl had brought up, which actually came from StarWarsNewsNet.com. And that was talking about how, the showrunner saying the series is about ordinary people, and, this is going to be like kind of a Jason Bourne kind of thing, and it's not going to be what I think a lot of people think it might be. The second part of this discussion, which we'll get to in a minute, is these reports that Andor is probably going to break canon, which is a pretty big deal. So I found that this morning, and... well, actually, you found that this morning too. I mean, we were a little late getting the topic for today, but it was something that we thought was pretty compelling. But you have to frame this stuff by looking at the entire franchise as a whole, and this is one of the mistakes. This is one of the things that I love about our show, actually, is that a lot of times, because people are trying to get clicks and they're trying to get people to follow them and, sign up for my Patreon. And I mean, hey, it's true. We do have our buymeacoffee.com thing to where you could support us. There's some packages available that are pretty cool, actually, if you want to support us on a monthly basis, or of course you can always donate to us. Yes, that's true with us too. We actually already have a supporter who's doing $25 a month right now. Thank you so much. But the thing is that one of the things I love about our show, because we're not obsessed with the YouTube-ness of it, is the fact that we're not just looking at one little tiny thing, right? Because we could just sit there and talk about this article and, how it affects it. But it's really the whole franchise. And I honestly hope that Lucasfilm takes this into consideration. This is actually probably a good time to transition to the second article, which, again, I haven't had time to read. You didn't even know about it until I texted it to you. So let me go into this here. Okay, it's talking about, Lucas broke the mold, blah, blah, blah. Talking about the volume. So it's talking about how Andor is basically passing on the tech and going old school. And okay, so this is not actually what I wanted. This is like a different thing. Okay.
Well, while you're looking for that, I will say this. Andor,
I got it.
hmm?
I got it. I mean, you could say what you want to say. Don't get me wrong. I'm just,
I know. No,
just just don't sit
fight it
there
out right
acting.
here.
Yeah, just don't sit there and act like it's gonna take me forever. Now I'm a little bit prepared here. Now, I mean, let's just don't treat me like I'm.
Sorry, it's the new higher complex.
Yeah,
But
right. Yeah,
anyway,
there you go. Exactly. Yes.
um, no, but I just think with Andor, like I said before, and I don't know if you were here, Ronaldo, when I was talking about it, but the whole fact that it's really going to be about character development, and that's what
Hmm.
made Rogue One so interesting, was because you kind of got away from the whole mythos of the Force, and but I mean, you kind of had it with Chirrut Imwe, you know what I'm saying, but for the most part, it dealt with more characters, how the Empire was affecting them. And we're going to delve deeper into that with Andor. And so that's what makes that so compelling, is because now we're going to see, well, okay, let's figure out like how integral Mon Mothma was. I mean, we kind of know based upon the books, and she's been in there like the whole step of the way. Her excuse me,
Oh, Bail
what's his name now?
Organa.
Bail, yeah, thank you. Bail Organa. Those people like that.
Well, you didn't think
Even
he was. You didn't think.
Admiral Akbar, all those guys, what I'm saying? Like, there's all these people who were like kind of integral parts of creating the rebellion. And now we're about to find out, like, okay, well, how did they get in contact with each other?
Yeah.
Because at this point, like, the rebellion is kind of like spread
Well,
out.
you
You
kind
kind of
of
had
saw
like
that though. You saw
pockets.
that. You saw that in
Mhm.
episode 3 a little bit. Like they teased it, right? They're
Yeah.
all kind of meeting in hush hush. I mean, come on. You didn't think Organa was going to bail on the rebellion, did you?
Oh.
Oh.
Ah,
I know. I actually
painful.
look, man. I took myself out with that one. I might need a few, but let's
I see you
see.
came prepared with that.
Yeah, so it's talking about Diego Luna's Cassian Andor may have a few deviations from Star Wars canon. Yeah. What's the deviations? So, of course, it's a spy thriller. It's going to take place 5 years before the events of Rogue One, which that's another good reminder too, because a lot of times we even forget, like, when's this thing even taking place?
Timeline wise, yeah.
Yeah, timeline, because that's getting more and more important now. I mean, it used to be really more important for the books because they were slotting those things in between episodes and all kinds of different things, right? And it actually became important more so to show how new books fit into the current crop of books. It wasn't even so much about the movies anymore. It's like, okay, well, there's this new book and we have this, huge expansive canon. Whereas, well, not really with the expanded universe, but you did have a bunch of stories that were definitely taken as canon. So yeah, this is talking about, Mothma's gonna be there. Okay, this of course goes back to something that Voyager brought up with Tony Gilroy, right? Because he sat down with Vanity Fair, teases a few details. And when it comes to the 5-year period prior to the start of New Hope, even information from the Star Wars encyclopedia site Wikipedia may not be entirely true. So his quote is as follows: "There are certain events that happen in these 5 years that are important and need to be paid attention to. There are certain people, characters that are legacy characters that the audience, the passionate audience, really feels that they have an understanding of and know. In some cases, they're right. And in some cases, what we're saying is what you know, what you've been told, what's on Wikipedia, what you've been telling each other is really all wrong. Or it's upside down, or it's sideways, or it's the opposite of what you thought was true. Or it's way more interesting than you had ever thought. Or that's a lie and there's a reason for it. I would say that there's some surprises in store." So, basically, so far, I mean, there's more, by the way. So far, what he's talking about here seems to be like, look, a lot of these things that you thought not really accurate. And that could
Mhm.
screw around with canon a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I think, but he also said that a lot of these things that are going to happen uh in Andor, like, okay, yeah, you have the whole rebellion, and you have the whole story of Star Wars that is taking place in different sections of the galaxy. This is
Hmm.
just so that has no bearing on what Andor is doing this series. So the things that you thought that was like, okay, well, that might ruin canon. It's like, well, it really won't because it's dealing with something that you know has nothing to do with, I guess, quote unquote, the main story in a way.
Well, we'll see. And because the other thing you got to look at too is you can have some minute detail about a character that really doesn't affect anything canonically speaking. I mean, unless you are trying to delve, like take Palpatine for instance, right? You can come up with, and that's just, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be in this or not, but just as an example, you could say something about him, and it doesn't necessarily screw with a lot of the bigger canon because we never really paint in a lot of details with him.
Hmm.
Voyager says, I just watched and finished Rebels, and I have a feeling we'll see more of the Mon Mothma versus Saw Gerrera arguing over methods carrying out the rebellion. Saw more ruthless, Mon too bureaucratic. I would say
Oh yeah,
without fail that's going to happen, partially because why else bring Saw Gerrera into this? Two, you saw the end of Saw Gerrera. You saw that Mon Mothma, although she respected him, and admitted like, okay, he's fighting for the right side, but he's got a little bit different ideas than we do. Well, naturally, you put that in a film, you're kind of like, I wonder what that's all about. So this
yeah.
series is when you would want to delve into that.
Yeah, essentially, this is where you kind of have the differences of ideology. You have the Mon Mothma, who's more on the Martin Luther King kind of
Mm-hmm.
side of things. Saw Gerrera is more on the Malcolm X side of things. And so they're both fighting for the same cause. They just have different ways of doing it. And that's what makes it so compelling. And that's where you're going to get really into the character development because you're going to try to figure out, like, well, I see this person's point, I see that person's point. Who's really right? Who's really wrong? Or the person who I thought was right might be wrong in this situation, but right in another. You know what I mean? It's There's those varying degrees, and that's kind of how the real world works. That sometimes our politicians, our people that we have chosen to lead us, sometimes they don't do what's necessary at that particular moment, but maybe they have a grander plan in the end, and we can't see that, and so we judge them incorrectly based upon those uh those actions. So that's what's going to make Andor really compelling, is because you're seeing things from a bunch of different perspectives. You have Mon Mothma, you have Cassian, you have Bix, who's probably going to have her own input because she's a big part of this thing. You got Saul, who has his ways of doing stuff, and then there's this other guy, I can't remember, his older gentleman with the like white beard,
Oh
like he
yeah.
has his own thing, so it's really going to be just interesting to see like how everybody kind of interweaves themselves in the ultimate goal. And that's what's to me, that's what's going to make Andor a really compelling thing for Star Wars, because nothing like this has been seen before.
Well, and that's it. And on multiple levels too. So
Hmm.
you're seeing a lot of elements that have always been in Star Wars. They just never really been focused on too much.
Yeah, now we're putting it under the microscope.
Now we're putting another, and we're also taking characters that were somewhat side characters that were moving the story along, like a Mon Mothma, like a Bail Organa, like
Hmm.
all these people, even to a degree with Rogue One, right? I mean, the idea was, look, he's stealing the Death Star plan. This is how they get him. I mean, sometimes the character thing almost got in the way. It's like, well, we don't care. We just need this guy to get the plans. I want to see what Darth Vader does. That kind of thing. So now you're getting to see all this stuff where it's they're dealing with the minutia of everything now, and I think that is compelling because we always said that between all this Jedi Sith stuff that you actually have a really compelling either war story or political thriller brewing throughout the entire Star Wars universe. That
Absolutely.
if you actually took all the Jedi, Sith, and Force and all that stuff out of it, I mean, it might appeal to a different demographic, perhaps, but you'd still have a compelling story. And I mean, I admit, the whole like trade blockade and all that stuff was a tad dry in the Phantom Menace, but still, again, we all talk about how the Phantom Menace was executed poorly. We get that. We understand that. And the acting was wooden and all this other stuff. But one thing, and I think that this has been more so coming to light in recent years, I'll put it like that, is that everybody is now universally going, the prequels had a really good story. They just weren't executed that great. And I think that that's one of those things that, again, it just goes through all of Star Wars. There's a lot of, if Palpatine didn't have powers, it would still be this really cool guy who's, vying for power, and he's manipulating everybody and all this other stuff, and he manipulates his way into power. I mean, Star Wars has a lot of really interesting, suspenseful, thrilling, with the whole political overtones and undertones and all this stuff, spy film type stuff, I mean, there's a lot you could do, and I think that Andor is actually going to do it. And then as far as the canon breaking stuff, what was interesting was a couple of the articles, which of course I didn't read, but they were talking about, in particular, Rebels. And I can see maybe where it would start to mess with that a little bit, because they did show somewhat of the beginnings of that. But then again, you could always dismiss that by saying, look, the focus of Rebels is really the crew of the Ghost. And this is what the crew of the Ghost saw. Well, now in Andor, you're going to see what the crew of the Ghost didn't see. They could approach it like that.
Not to to deviate, but you brought up Palpatine, and this popped in my head that, if he was still alive, even though I love Ian McDiarmid, like that's Palpatine to me, of course. But you know who else would have probably made a good Palpatine? Gregory Itzin.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. Not anymore, though.
I mean, not anymore. I said he's no longer with us, but just saying.
I mean, unless they got some clones of him.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, though. With Andor, like I said, I think this show is really going to be about perspective, and it's really going to kind of focus. It's going to kind of bring the fans into a place where, who do you agree with? And that's the thing about character development. That's the thing about this particular series. It's not relying on the Sith and the Jedi to bail you out. Now you have to rely on these great integral stories in these characters that are really going to emphasize, what the Jedi are fighting for. If you get what I'm saying. So that's what's really going to be, a compelling story. And like you said, these people that we've seen and heard names of dropped, whether it's in books or movies, it's like, okay, well, this is what this person really does. It's like, oh, okay, Mom Mothma isn't just some lady just standing up there with this regal voice, like, oh, well, many Bothans died to bring us this information. It's like, no, like, here's what we had to go through to really get this stuff. And now you're like, okay, so now when you see that, when her deliver those lines, it has more gravitas to it, because it's like, yeah,
Well, and again, it's a lot of it is because up until now, even the Clone Wars, Saw Gerrera, all these guys, they were basically characters that were created to sort of move the narrative along. It's kind of like, okay, we need to get our main characters and our main storyline and all this from point A to point B to C to D and so on. And so these characters existed in order to facilitate that. And now we're actually finding out, and this is another testament to how good Star Wars is that, there's actually a story in there somewhere. This isn't just connective tissue. You know, this isn't just characters that are connecting these story threads together. There's actually another layer. There's a story going on underneath this story, and I think that that's something that you know, we could end up really seeing brought to life in a unique way, I think. And as far as the whole Sith and Jedi and stuff like that not being in this, you know, I'm glad that that's the case, and I'm sure that will continue to be the case, unless maybe season 2, you know, people are going, the ratings are slipping. Yeah, let's bring in the Sith Lord. And then I almost imagine Frau from Austin Powers.
Bring in the Sith!
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's kind of like, all right, we're going to have to maybe, you know, in case of emergency, it's like, you know what? We think Vader might fit into this story now. So that could happen. So Voyager says, not gonna lie, in Rebels, I was mad Mon Mothma would frequently not authorize reinforcements to help the Ghost crew. Maybe Andor will explain why she made those tough calls. That's actually another thing that I hadn't really thought of too in this, and that's a really good observation. Yeah, is the fact that some of these things that we saw, whether it be the Clone Wars or Rebels or even the prequels, we might look at some of these decisions and just go, well, that's kind of a boneheaded thing to do. I wonder why they did that. Maybe Andor will explain that.
Yeah, I mean, just like how we saw in Rogue One, what made it really cool, and was that, you know, the opening scene, pretty much, you know, you see Cassian, and, you know, we've always kind of looked at the rebellion as squeaky clean, like this, you know, honorable, noble group, and you kind of see them out the gate kind of doing some shady things, or doing things, you know, doing what you need to do to get the job done type stuff.
Yep.
And that's kind of like in that same vein where you got to make those tough calls. It's no different than what Poe experienced in Rise of Skywalker. You know, what Leia was trying to teach him the whole time is like, no, you can't just jump in your X-Wing and blow stuff up. Like, sometimes you have to play the long game, and sometimes you have to make the decisions, even though it's an unpopular one, because of the greater good. And that's what, like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see the different stories that they're going to play in, because, like I said, the first 3 episodes are just one story.
Yep.
So, and then it's going to branch out from that. So it's like, all right, well, how's all this going to play in with each other?
Well, I mean, I'll even go a step further, right? I mean, a lot of times as a leader too, you gotta lose a battle to win the war.
True.
So you have to know when to, you know, where the hero is always going to want to win.
You got to unfold them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that, I mean, it would be kind of nice. They won't do it, but it would be kind of cool to almost occasionally see the flip side, where you see these behind the scenes in the Empire and that political stuff, right? Because like one that just jumped out at me, I don't even know why. This is so hilarious. It just shows like my mindset's in a really funny place today or whatever. But you remember the scene when, you know, they're about to blow up the moon of Yavin, and you know, those guys, it's like those 2 guys or whatever go up, or maybe it was one, and they go up to Tark and they're like, yeah, listen, man, you know, we're kind of looking over, and there is a weakness in this. Should we prepare your shuttle? And he was all like, in our moment of triumph? You know, it's...
Yeah, I think you also made our chances, right?
Right. You know, I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, those guys, I want to see that whole backstory play out, where they're in a room analyzing this thing going, oh, dude, we probably should tell somebody about this, you know, like, okay, I know Invincible Death Star and all this other stuff, but we wouldn't be doing our job. It's almost like the Family Guy thing. It's like, if we didn't, we need to at least bring it to his attention.
Yeah, we can say at least we told him now.
At least we told him. And, you know, you got to wonder. It's kind of like, all right, I'll tell you what. We'll tell him, and then we're going to fly out of here, you know, because...
Right.
It's like, look, exactly. you can all stay and do your little moment of triumph thing. I'm just gonna like fly away and kind of see how the whole thing shakes out. But, I mean, all kidding aside, though, it would be interesting because we are getting the one side of here's all the inner workings of the rebels and stuff like that. It would be kind of cool to get that micro thing going with the Empire as well.
Oh yeah, and I think we're going to see that too because, even in the trailer, Cassian talks about, oh, they've gotten so lazy and they've gotten so this and, they would never expect me to be in there. You know what I mean? Just so you got to understand, like, I wonder how the Empire is going to feel.
Well, that's
like,
true.
okay,
that is true.
We're going to keep taking these hits. All right, something's got to shake.
Well, that's a good point. I sort of briefly forgot about that whole scene where it seems like he's infiltrating them. Guess we'll have to see on that one. Ronaldo says, the scene in episode 4 when they are about to destroy Yavin, the Death Star destroys itself. That sudden cut is so funny. Yeah, I know. And I thought that was a really cool thing. At first, even as a 6-year-old kid, I was in the theater, and I wasn't even sure, like, did it backfire or something? And here's another thing that's hilarious, too, since we're on the subject. The people that were actually on the Yavin base, they're just kind of like hearing the Death Star will be in range in 4 minutes, and it's kind of like, all right, does anybody maybe want to, I don't know, make an evacuation plan or, I mean, the funny thing about it is they're on Hoth in the very next film, and they get wind that, hey, there's a bunch of Star Destroyers in the air. It's like, all right, everybody out. Let's go. Evacuating transports, holding them off as long as they can. You've got this, like, moon-sized, weaponized space station that their computer keeps announcing, like, look, this thing is about to be in range.
It's here.
And they're just all, like, kind of chilling. And even, of course, the joke we always made, like, hey, Luke, you switched off your targeting computer. And he's like, yeah, I'm all right. Like, no explanation other than I'm all right. And they're just like, oh, all right. And then they go back, and they're staring intently at that little round, map thing or whatever they're looking at. And
it's like battleship.
Right. And even 3PO. 3PO starts going ballistic when they're just going into an asteroid field. They're about to be turned into an asteroid field. And 3PO is just kind of, it's sort of like, I never understood that scene. That whole scene. Yeah. It's like nobody's making any attempt. Like, hey, you know what? This thing keeps getting in range. We only got like 3 fighters left. Maybe it's time to go.
It's the Force, man. It's just a lot of calm to them. Obi-Wan was watching over, like, guys, relax. We got it.
I guess maybe they were, just really taking some hardcore drugs. Maybe on the scenes that we didn't see, they're like, down
snorting spice,
copious amounts of alcohol, like some spiked blue milk or something. I mean, that was just one of those things that every time I watch that scene, I think of that. I can't help it. But again, I think that Andor is probably going to be the one. And I don't say that lightly either, because I know that with the other series, we were hoping that they would be really good. But we, our expectations were fairly tempered. It was kind of like, well, we'll wait and see what happens. Well, with this one, especially from what we've seen on the trailer, and again, if you guys haven't seen our reaction, first of all, if you haven't seen the trailer, why not watch it with us? Go ahead and find, after we're done, of course, find this reaction video that we did last week where we reacted to the second Andor trailer, which is really the meatier one. Check that out. Watch it with us. Let us know what you think in the comment section of that video. And, check that out. Because, again, I think that when we were watching it during that reaction video, because I remember both of us purposely didn't watch it beforehand. We're not going to do what a lot of YouTubers do, where it's kind of like they watch something, take all these notes, and then sit down, okay, I'm going to watch this for the first time, that kind of thing. But we really did watch it for the first time on that. And, I mean, we watched it twice on the show. And I don't remember actually being as I mean, I might have been as excited, but I don't remember actually thinking to myself, wow, this show is going to be incredible. And I feel that way about this. Like, beyond even a good Star Wars show, I think this is going to be just a really amazing television.
Yeah, I second that. I just think that we're going to get the same vibe from Rogue One. I think we're going to get, we're getting the same director or one of the directors.
Yep.
So that's cool. We're getting that continuity in that regard. And then, it's a different type of vibe that he's really good at. He's good at putting these together. Like I said, he's done the Jason Bourne series. So, and he did really, really well with Rogue One. So I have no fear, at least right now, that Andor will be a hit.
Yeah, and I would echo those comments, actually. I mean, since we're in our final thoughts, and if you guys are, look, you can still tell us what you guys are thinking in the chats, but you got about 20 seconds or so if you want us to respond to anything, so you might want to start chatting. Otherwise, comment section. But yeah, I would echo those sentiments. And a little echo bass, if you will. I definitely think that, yes, this isn't just, hey, this will be like the Jason Bourne. No, this is the guy that actually did them. So you do have a little bit of a pedigree there. You have something where somebody is going after a certain style, and he's creating that style, and he's already done stuff in that style. It's not just, I'm going to be influenced by it or try to duplicate it or whatever. This guy's done it. And he's done the Rogue One thing. And as far as him not being a fan of Star Wars, honestly, I think in this case it's good, because I think he's going to make a really compelling, wonderful television series. And that, by default, I mean, I'm a little careful because I'm always thinking in my head about exceptions. Like, you can have something that's a good movie, let's say. Like, okay, this is a really good movie. I don't know if it was a good Star Wars movie. Like, I could see that conversation, right? And I could see a situation where I could see a show like this and go, man, this is an amazing show. I don't know if it was a good Star Wars show, but it's an amazing show. But I honestly think that given his track record with the work he did on Rogue One, because Gareth Edwards, I mean, let's not totally discount him. He did do a lot of work. But look, Tony Gilroy came in and finished it. So really you can't discount his work either. And I think when you factor in some of the things that he did and his influence on Rogue One, and the fact that he's the one that's taking these characters, it's not somebody else stepping in, and that he did the Jason Bourne thing and all this other stuff, I think we're going to get something really good. So again, it is like, I mean, we say this at every show, but it's not about what we think. It really is about what you guys think. We love to chat with you guys live. We like continuing the conversation in the comments section. We also have a Facebook group, Head to Head to Star Wars community, that you guys can join. We can continue the conversation there. So yeah, hit us up at our social media, because I don't really I'm so sloppy with this stuff sometimes, but I never really talk about that much. I used to. But you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Head to Head SW. And honestly, again, it's not like we're sitting there like the Kardashians trying to get 1 million followers and likes and all this other stuff. Really, it's a way to, I mean, we're usually with you guys for maybe hour and a half, twice a week. So the rest of the time, a good way to keep up with what we're trying to do, or maybe you guys have ideas for shows, or maybe you just want to continue the conversation that we've been having, that's a great place to do it. It doesn't have to end when we sign off here. So you're going to want to do that. And then, of course, if you did like this show, if you like the whole discussion format that we do, let us know in the comments section. Hey, this is great. Of course, the best way to let us know, just click that like button. Click the like button, hit the subscribe button, We go live every Monday and Wednesday at 8. If not, of course, we have a pre-recorded episode. This Monday will probably be pre-recorded. We're going to have to try to sneak out some time to do something for that. I mean, there's there's a small possibility, I guess, if we did it at 9. Because, like, this job that I got to do isn't really... I mean, it's not like, we have to strike and do all this stuff afterwards. I mean, if we made it at 9, I probably could make it, but, we'll see. Either way, thing will be up on Monday, so whether we're live, whether we're pre-recorded, we'll be here. So definitely let us know in the comment section what you guys are thinking. What do you think of Andor? What do you expect from it? And, of course... if you want to support us even further, there's the Buy Me a Coffee link down in the description below. You can buy us a blue milk. You can either do a one-time donation. You can do a monthly thing. We got some packages with some incentives. But whatever you guys want to do, it's cool with us. Or, you know what? Just you guys hanging with us every week is thanks enough. So with that... again, we have no idea what we're going to be talking about Monday, but as you like to say, it'll be Star Wars.
It'll be Star Wars.
It'll be Star Wars. So, until then, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.